We've got a star guest today, Chubster.
Yeah.
Great to see you here today, bud.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Chubster has had some issues lately, and he learned that he could lose a lot of weight by going ketogenic, right? I mean, it's a valid thought.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah, most times.
Most times, but hey, look, he's doing pretty good down here. And so what he did is he started having some coffee with a big wallop of butter in the morning, and he wasn't feeling quite right. Were you? So he wasn't doing very well from that, so he thought, well, what can I do? So he went back to the internet and he started researching and started taking things like, what are they called? Exogenous?
Ketones, MCT oils, there are, yeah, these would be the most common.
Yeah, so is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
Did it work?
Obviously not.
So, Chubster, can you leave?
Sure.
So he struggled, and he now needs to go on a different program, and we got Alessandro Ferretti here to set him straight, and we'll revisit him later. But so what happened here? Why did Chubster not get the ideal results? Because there's all this information about eat fat, lose fat.
Yeah.
There's all this information about, hey, you get great, tremendous brain energy.
Yeah.
Just if you struggle in the morning or you want to eat less, take say coffee and put some butter in it or MCT oil.
Yeah.
And if you want to increase performance, then you take a bunch of exogenous ketones, which are basically ketones in a pill, or MCT oil. So what do we do here?
Okay, so I think that the first point to make is that ketogenic diet, low carb, high fat diet are not suitable for everyone. That's the first thing that I would probably want to assess. So most of the times, if people found problems within that type of dietary approach, I would suggest to work with a practitioner that would understand well who's suitable and who is not. That just leaving that to a side for a second.
Hold on. So are you saying that not everyone can just go right into trying ketosis without additional support?
Totally. I've never, so far in my short and colorful nutritionist career, have researched something in this depth and advised so many people not to go on it. It's a very powerful tool that can be a medical tool for epilepsy, cancer, and etc., or for type 2 diabetes, for example, yet has to be used wisely.
Okay, so this isn't like GAPS or paleo or
No.
low carb or Atkins or all these other types of diets.
That is correct. So you have a low carb, higher fat, which probably the vast majority of people can feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know that fat is not the enemy, but is perhaps the amount of sugars we have and simple carbohydrates that we have in really high amount. But yet at the same time, I would say that to make it keto, that's an extra step, and that, in my view, always requires supervision.
So explain to me why the body would naturally go in ketosis. I mean, obviously, we can't get our bodies into ketosis. So what is that? Define to the listener here why the body would go in ketosis.
Generally speaking, and this is still true for pretty much across the board, the body will go in ketosis to compensate for a lack of glucose available within the diet. So, in fact, the easiest way that I have found, and what me and my colleagues have found to enter ketosis, is fasting.
So, if you have a lack of glucose in the diet, which comes from what?
Carbohydrates mainly.
Right. So, if you have a lack of carbohydrates in the diet,
Mm-hmm.
then your body will start to conserve that glucose for other things.
Precisely.
Such as what? What is highly needed for glucose in the body that can't use ketones?
The main one would be some areas of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So some cells in the brain will still require glucose.
Mm-hmm.
But even in a fasting state, the liver can manufacture glucose from every substrate we have. So
Okay.
obviously can get glucose from carbs, can get glucose from fat, and can get glucose from protein.
Okay. So, but primarily the body will shift into ketosis when there's low amounts of glucose.
Yeah.
And it will conserve that glucose for cells that are highly requiring it.
That is correct.
And you get the low amounts of glucose typically, well, naturally, from being hungry, being starved, being fasting.
Yes. So there is a slight differentiation to make here, which is really important. Someone can feel hungry and someone can have a craving. With my 10-year-old, I say, okay, he says I'm hungry, and I say, okay, is it coming from here or is it coming from here?
Mm-hmm.
If it comes from here, most of the times is true hunger. If it comes from there, that they want something, then normally it's a craving. In fact, when we measure blood glucose level, if it comes from here, it's all nice and stable and has been stable already for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That can be hours. Whereas the drop in glucose, so if someone has a very high level of glucose and it drops to still high level, but there is a drop, normally in European terms, 0.6 of a millimolar, in US terms is 10-15 milligrams per deciliter, that's the craving. And is the drop that creates that specific craving.
That's a pretty key point. And you might have to rewind that to listen to that again. But
Yeah.
that is a really, really key point because you need to tune in to that. So if you have a craving versus a true hunger,
Correct.
you need to evaluate that. If you find yourself getting up frequently and going to eat something unconsciously,
Yeah.
then at some point you need to check in before you reach for that food item again, especially
Precisely.
looking at what it is before you just start consuming it. I have this problem. I was studying and preparing for a conference.
Yeah.
I found that I was eating more carbohydrate than I usually would, and it was because I was stressed out. And it basically hit me when I got up about every 5 minutes, literally.
Yes.
And I was eating chips or crackers or, stuff that I basically never eat. And I was going into ice cream and trying to find cookies in my kids' candy stash that my wife hides. And I finally checked in and I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm eating this stuff for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And so then I can check my stress. But all right, so going back to keto, well, go ahead.
That is the typical, sorry to interrupt, that's the typical scenario. So, generally speaking, what happens when we are stressed, the glucose becomes highly unregulated. So it keeps going up and down and up and down and up and down. And we were taught at college they will take a time and then it crashes. These fluctuation can happen with the peaks distant as little as 15 minutes.
Yeah.
15 minutes. And
Right.
I observed that by implanting myself with a ongoing glucose monitoring system. Whereas, for example, yesterday we went for that 5-hour hike. I was fasted all throughout the hike. And when we got down, I started to relax. I started to feel the churning and the noises from my stomach, that these are truly associated with hunger. But I wanted to train my body to work in that. My head never lost lucidity.
Right.
That's the difference. So it's a very subtle yet very important difference.
Okay. So if someone is not very active,
Yeah.
so let's create some scenarios here.
Sure.
Chubster, the bear, it's my son Theo said, "Dad, you've got to put Chubster in the video today." So, hey, he was in the video. But Chubster, he is a great example because Chubster, well, he's lazy.
Yep.
And we'll reframe that. Chubster is not a very active bear.
Yeah.
And his food choices were the same. He still ate the same amount of carbs that he was normally eating and the same amount of protein. Then he decided to go taking this coffee with a bunch of butter, and then he started taking exogenous ketones. He kept gaining weight.
Yeah.
So what happened there?
We hope you enjoyed that. To find out if the ketogenic diet is right for you, you can take the assessment at drbenlynch.com/keto or text the word keto diet to the number 44222. And for part 2 of the interview, you can get our ketogenic resource bundle at seekinghealth.org. Thank you.